So we got the trike up for its first test flight, and let me tell you, it went great. Except for that landing. But more on that later. So here's the CAD model, and this is in SolidWorks if anybody cares. I was really going for a very minimalist approach with this design. These fiberglass axles give you a nice comfy suspension with the simplest possible method. Aluminum T-frame, basically. It's a welded construction. Here is the configuration when you're on the ground. You note there's a 10-degree inclination to the thrust line. That keeps your prop wash off of your wing. As you do your initial inflation, the wing is being brought up by the A-lines. Once you have a clean inflation, then it can run up through the prop wash and not get thrown left or right or get collapsed or inverted. So on the ground you are taxiing on the seat of the trike, and as soon as you start getting lift from that wing, that load transfers up into the harness. You lift off of that seat board on the trike, and now you're just in the harness and you still have that weight shift authority in flight. And as that weight transfers up and starts to lift the machine off the ground, your nose gear will first come up, and then of course your rear wheels, and that's exactly how you land. The inverse of that, when you're landing, you just come down on those back wheels just like a tricycle configuration on a regular aircraft, and then bring that nose gear down. And here you can see about what it's going to look like in flight. That nose gear is up 10 degrees and your thrust line is now level with the ground. So you've got good, efficient flight characteristics. If you take a closer look, you can see the rubber isolators where the frame is joined. And these are actually 3D printed TPU. That's thermal plastic urethane. It gives you a rubber isolator that helps suck up some vibration, gives you some vibration dampening to the overall machine, and won't scratch your paint. On the rear end here, I'll just point out that there's about a 5-degree angle on each side for the rear springs. The springs again are made out of fiberglass rod, 1-inch rod, and that 5-degree angle on each side is intended just to get the camber on the rear wheels to basically level out and be zero camber at when you're taxiing around on the ground. That's based on my weight. Got that a little bit off, as I noticed when I watched the video of the flight, and could use a little bit more angle. Not a big deal though. These were 3D printed pedals I had on the front, and I actually broke one of these on my first flight. And they're kind of superfluous. I just kind of wanted to have a little extra grip on there. Not a big deal, but what I think I'm going to do is go back to my original design, which was a welded stirrup, and then it'll be a strap on there. Well, I noticed one of my feet actually bounced a little bit off the pedal also because I touched down a little hard. And I think these stirrups will help you find center on that wheel. When we watched the video of my landing, from my POV, I noticed after the fact that I was coming in with my wheel actually cocked to the right. So as soon as the front wheel touched down, I ended up veering off to the right and caused me to tip over at the end. We'll see that later. Also, the last change I'm thinking about doing here is adding a spring return system that'll physically center up that front wheel, in addition to the caster that's built into the design, and having those stirrups where you can really find and feel that wheel being center through your feet. The rear wheels here are mounted on a 5/8 inch bolt, which is turned to fit the head inside of a 1-inch ID aluminum tube. That's a 120 wall aluminum tube there. So a little more than half of that tube is taken up by the fiberglass rod that comes in, and then on the other end there's a concentric spacer around that bolt to keep everything in alignment. Pretty simple design, a couple bolts through to hold everything together with lock nuts, of course. Alright, now let's take a look at the very first test flight. Got my brother out here on comms. He's going to give me a little direction, make sure that wing's coming up right, and help me correct right away. It does come up to my left, and he gets me corrected, and everything looks good, so we send it. And if you look down in the mirror, this is just an inexpensive little bubble mirror I got on Amazon that perfectly encapsulates the wing's dimensions. So by looking down, I can actually see that wing and make corrections. Now you notice my feet aren't sitting square in the pegs, and I think I tried to adjust them there, but this is going to be pretty critical when I come in for a landing. That front nose gear is going to be off to my right when I come in for a landing, and I don't realize this while I'm flying the first time. Now if you look up the risers here, it's tough to see in this image, but my risers are actually basically 180 off, so my first setup wasn't exactly right, and I simply just had to stow them, reach around, and then grab them the right way. Didn't have any problem with authority on the brakes. I didn't feel it, so no problem there, but definitely gonna have to pay more attention on the setup. This was my first ever trike flight, and just to be clear, we're not experts here on trikes. This is my first trike build and my first trike flight. Basically what you see is what you get. That said, it took off great. It was real nice and smooth, and that was pretty cool coming from foot launch and then trying my first trike launch, and just how easy and smooth that was relative to, you know, a foot launch where you have all these things going on, and a lot of those variables are just not present when you're launching on wheels. Your lines are being brought up by the line holders basically on the sides of the cage, and I don't have A-assist on these, and I don't think it's necessary, so I'm going to continue to try to run without them. Alright, so we're setting up for our approach here, and the wind is really tossing me around quite a bit. I'm still able to hit the field on the far left side here, and then sure enough, watch that wheel.
Thank God I had that on video.